This is 88.7 FM WHCL out of Clinton, New York. I'm Kate, and I will never be a coffee person.
And I'm Rachel, and I will never be a morning person.
And you're listening to Liberal Arts and Crafts.
Good evening, Kate.
Good evening, Rachel. Listeners, we again are recording at now 11 p.m. on a Wednesday night.
Because we can't get our stuff together. Woo.
Oh, well. This gives us more fodder, more information to talk about, more days of our lives.
Yeah, days of our lives.
Throwback.
I actually kind of like recording in the middle of the week. It breaks up the monotony a little bit because it's a thing that I have to do that isn't schoolwork.
That's true.
So it feels like a nice break, but not a break that's like a nap where I might feel like I'm not being productive because this is doing something.
Mm-hmm.
So,
as I was saying on the podcast last week, in my failed attempts to write a speech all week long, I was really consumed last week with tasks that weren't school related, which was, I don't know if I liked it. I think I liked it.
Well,
it was new and different.
That's what the real world is going to be like, Kate.
That's what the real world is, not school. That's in a few weeks.
Jokes. There's only 33 days left.
That's actually more than I thought because I looked at my planner today and saw that there were 2 weeks left of classes. And that made me feel like there was no school left. So 33 days is fine.
Yeah, I was under the impression that there were more. That's like a month.
Yeah.
I don't know. Everything's scary. Anyway, before we jump into this existential abyss...
I want to insert a SpongeBob laugh right here. I wish I could imitate SpongeBob's laugh, but that's like what I'm envisioning in my head when I think about graduating. It's like that kind of thing. Well, speaking of graduating and all things existential, it seems like your light bulb is shining a light on this issue.
Yeah, my light bulb is the exact opposite of everything that I'm currently emotionally struggling with. It is a positive anecdote about losing people, which runs counter to everything I stand for.
Losing
Not exactly.
them.
Okay, so time to talk about the real light bulb. So our freshman year, as any avid listeners will know, Kate and I were roommates. We lived in a building named South on this college campus. A lot of other people lived there with us that we were very close to. One of them was a man named Jackson. And our sophomore year, we were both co-RAs in South and spent a lot of time together. But then the end of sophomore year, he wasn't really enjoying Hamilton as much as he thought, and he decided to transfer to Georgetown. And I just resigned myself to the fact that I was never going to see him again. I was like, all right, this is the end of it. He's like in a totally different place, and that friendship, that book is over. And I'm very much in the camp, we were talking about this in group this morning, about falling into the trap of, if you're not my best friend, I'm voting you off the island. Like, you don't deserve my, like, time as much as, like, my really true friends do, and it's probably not destined to last for that long. So I think I was falling prey to that a little bit, and I really didn't think that we would, like, ever be in touch ever again. And then he visited last week. For like 4 days, he came to campus, and I was like, oh, you know, like, I want to see him and like say hi, but I don't know that it'll be the same as it used to be. And I was having all these reservations because we hadn't seen each other in like almost 2 years. And then I walked into my suite Wednesday night at midnight, turned into my common room, and he was sitting there on my common room couch, and it was like nothing had changed. It was like someone just like flipped a switch, and he had never left. And I just like ran over and we hugged it out. And the freakish part was, even though it felt like he had never left and it was so like easy to talk to him, it was so apparent that he had changed a lot. He was so much happier. He carried himself with so much more poise and confidence. He had all these future plans figured out. He's going to grad school in Georgia now for philosophy, which is awesome. And he was just so much lighter and happier and like so much more mature than the Jackson that I knew freshman and sophomore year. And that wasn't as jarring for me as I thought it would be, because I am so afraid of losing people. I'm like thinking of graduation. I'm like, oh, I'm not going to be living with my best friends, and we're going to separate, we're going to mature independently, and then when we come back together, it won't be the same, and because it's not the same, it's going to be bad. But me and this old friend came back together after multiple years, almost like, I don't know, a year and 2/3, whatever, apart, and we had both changed, but the relationship was still good and valuable. So I realized that distance, whether that be like physical distance or emotional distance, in this case both, because we were apart from each other and also hadn't spoken literally in a very long time, does not mean it has to be a death sentence. And it's entirely possible to pick up where you left off, but also in a different way that is still a good way. So that was a really like long-winded explanation, but this was like a very dramatic personal discovery for me, because anyone who knows me well knows that I don't do very well with goodbyes, especially to people I care about, because they're the most important things to me, like above all. So for me to have this real live anecdote in my life that this is okay and separation does not always have to be a terrible like death sentence to a relationship, that was like a breath of fresh air. I was like, okay, like maybe everyone telling me that it's going to be okay after graduation is right to some degree. I was like, okay. So rant over. That was, I think, really good for my mental place as a senior.
I really, really like that. And it's something I really struggle with goodbyes as well. I think this is really valuable for me in particular, thinking about my friends from home, because my friends from Hamilton, a lot of them are from the East Coast, and I will be there with them next year. But my friends from home are, well, one of them is ending up on the East Coast, or maybe two, but we kind of have dispersed to different parts of the country. And since we no longer have, our home base is like we are returning to less frequently. And so I find that it's more up in the air when I will be seeing them again. But it's so nice to know that when you revisit that friendship, it will still be what it was. This is also super tangential, but I don't know if I talked about this on the podcast before, but I had this really scary revelation when I was hiking the John Muir Trail after freshman year, which I talk about a lot, where I was lying in the tent one night and I realized that I think my biggest fear is permanent goodbyes, which does not have to mean death. That sounds really dark, I know, but goodbyes where there really is no reason you would see a person again unless you went out of your way to do so. And it happened on the John Muir Trail because we had been hiking with this group of 3 like 25-year-old guys from, have I talked about this on the podcast before?
Yeah, you have. Yeah.
Okay, well then I'll summarize briefly. Basically, we said goodbye to them and I like cried and cried, even though I didn't know them very well. And it was because we had had this isolated moment together in time in a really unique context that had no reason to exist outside of the High Sierras. So anyways, I was thinking of that when you were talking about these friendships that can still span across not only distances, like physical distances, but temporal distances.
Yeah, which is something, just to wrap this up before this goes on for like 20 minutes, which is something that I honestly didn't believe in until this past week, because all of my really close friendships from high school totally fizzled out with distance. Like, distance absolutely annihilated them. And while I don't really mourn those friendships, because I know now that they weren't perfect, and the friendships that I have now are better for me and they work better for me, I never had that example backing up this theory. So thank you, Jackson.
Jackson.
I will still be having an existential graduation crisis, though, so more work needs to be done. I will keep you filled in.
Well, my light bulb is also existential.
Woo!
I pinpointed why I do not like New York City this week, thanks to Zach Hardmeyer. Shout out to Zach.
I love Zach. Oh.
So to listeners who love New York City, which there are probably many, many, many people who love New York City.
Our very own Gretchen Rubin lives in New York City.
No. So there is nothing wrong with New York City, but I have figured out why I am scared of it, and maybe at this time in my life, it is not right for me. is because we were reading a book in Proust called Passing Time by Michel Boutour. That was my best guess at that French name. And he writes about this city that he lives in. The narrator just hates the city he is in. All he does is talk about how evil it is, how it's malicious, it's out to get him, it's ugly. And he's always talking about it in these really dramatic, like evil terms, like the city is purposely smothering its citizens. And we are trying to figure out why he is projecting this hatred onto the city, because the other characters in the book don't seem to hate the city as much as he does. So are they delusion? Do they not see that it's really gross and ugly? Or is this something that the main character feels within his heart but is putting onto the city to blame it for something? And Zach said something so insightful about this. He just looks up and just deadpans this bit of wisdom that was, it is so much easier to credit a city with being evil and malicious as opposed to indifferent. It is harder to live somewhere that is indifferent to your existence, but it is easier to cope if you think it's out to get you, because then you have some purpose within it. And I was like, that is exactly why I am scared of New York City, is because you are so small and insignificant in a city that doesn't care about you. And you could say the same thing about Boston, but having lived there with you, I felt like I could manage the city and really belong to it and had a place in it, and that the city was there and was open to me. Like the city had parks to offer to me, and it had Pokemon to offer to me, and really good ice cream. And every time I've been in New York City, it was like all this stuff was happening, and I was just a fly on the wall that was trying to navigate my way around. So I've been thinking a lot about that, and thinking also about how maybe next time I go to a city like New York, I can find a way to rationalize ways to like it by thinking of maybe focusing less on the indifference of it and more on how can I make this community within the larger city my own? How can I really take advantage of a smaller space within it?
I like that. I like that interpretation. Thank you, Zach. And
Thanks,
Kate,
Zach.
for your interpretation of the interpretation. I'm going to start out with my jam because I already told Kate that I've decided not to like hers because I don't like the singer. Okay, that's a lie. I'll probably enjoy it, but
I shouldn't have put the name of the singer because I know you like it if you listen to the song without knowing.
Well, that just makes it all the more intriguing.
Continue.
I say through clenched teeth.
Continue.
Okay, so my jam is Painter Song by the one and only Norah Jones. This came into my mind, again, surprise, surprise, because Jackson was on campus this past weekend, and we did a lot of talking about music because we have very similar music tastes in an emotional sense. In a physical sense, he listens to a lot more country than I do, but in an emotional sense, we both really like sad ballad type music, which is the opposite of you, Kate, because I know you really like peppy, jazzy, positive music. So we talked a lot about sad music and throwback music, and we also talked a lot about Norah Jones because we both have a mutual love of Norah Jones. And I actually did some thinking about Norah Jones over spring break. I was doing my thesis and I was really stressed. I needed music to calm me down. So I was like, what is more soothing than Norah Jones? Do you know Norah Jones songs, or is that...
I know some Norah Jones. Okay. I don't listen to nearly as much as people think that I should.
Right. Okay. Just wondering if you knew of her.
Oh, yeah.
So I was trying to decide what my favorite song was, and I listened to this one song on shuffle that totally caught my ear because I remember hearing it when I was little, but I never really knew the words. I didn't know what it was called, and I looked it up, and it's Painter Song, and it's a very understated, slow, jazzy type song almost. And it makes me feel like I'm lounging on, the French Riviera somewhere, drinking wine and, perhaps I'm, I don't know, reading a novel or something. It's very calming and it's very subdued. And I highly recommend that anyone in a moment of stress give it a listen because it is so calming.
I could have used that last week had I known.
Well, now you know.
Okay, so my jam is the exact opposite of a stress-relieving song, But the experience in which I heard this just was monumental to my week. It was the best part of my week, hands down. Actually, not hands down, but it was a great part of my week. Okay. This song is called Me Too, and yes, it is by Meghan Trainor. Rachel, for the record, I'd like you to know that the Peckhams, shout out to the Peckhams, went to a Meghan Trainor concert and bought me a t-shirt, which I have at my house, even though I didn't go to the Meghan Trainor concert. And it says, oh my gosh, what does it say? It says something about haters on it. Oh, it's so funny. I wish we had a Twitter so I could upload the photo of me wearing it. Long story short, so everyone, I'm still training for Hamtrek. It is still rough. It is really hard. Hamtrek is next week. I'm not at all freaking out about it, and I'm not underprepared. So I went swimming on Saturday, and I'm going to be talking about swimming later in the podcast, but it was really hard and really frustrating, and I got out of the pool, and I told myself that I was going to immediately run a 5K after doing this swim workout, which, I need to be able to do for Hamtrek, but I can't run a 5K, period, and I had to do that after working out. So I set out on this run, and recently I've been only listening to podcasts while I run because I have this obsession with being productive, which I don't like about myself, and therefore podcasts are like this productive thing that I like to listen to instead of listening to meaningless music. And this time I started the run, and I was just drowning in this run. I was so ready to walk. I was going so slow that I decided that I had to give up listening to podcasts, and I had to listen to some pump up music if I was going to survive this 5K. So I switched to a Google Play workout playlist and starts playing these songs, and I started picking up speed because I was like, okay, these are better. But then I get tired again, and I've hit this lull, and I was like, this is it. This is where I don't finish this 5K. And this song comes on by Meghan Trainor. I don't know it is by her. And the first lyric of the song goes, who's that sexy thing standing over there? Oh, that's me, looking in the mirror. And that's the first line, and I lost my mind. I was just like, yes! And so I'm on this run, I'm drowning, and Meghan Trainor starts belting about how hot she is. And I was like, I can do this run. I can do it. And I ran my fastest 5K ever. Look at that. Look at what this song did for me. I finished it. I was literally I had my hands in the air. I was replaying this song. I was like, I am the greatest thing ever. And I just loved it. And I've been listening to it all week. And you may have your reservations about Meghan Trainor, but this is a seriously feel-good song, and it can make you overcome anything, I personally believe.
Okay, for you, I will distance this song from Meghan Trainor's identity.
I didn't even know that it was by her until I looked afterwards. I didn't even recognize her voice.
Yeah. Well, I will give it a listen, and I will let you know if I enjoy it.
Listeners, prepare to be pumped up. My vignette this week is pretty ridiculous, Rachel. Did you witness this vignette?
Yeah, I was there because I told you to do it.
I'm asking you to comment on this scenario. There was an a cappella party on Thursday night. It was a pajama party. I was really excited. I pulled out this onesie that I had bought specifically for a pajama party or for a Halloween party. At Target, I invested a significant amount of money in a purple dinosaur onesie. And it is an incredible onesie. And this was an investment for my future because now, every October, if I don't have a Halloween costume as a young adult, I'm not a young adult, sad, but true, as an adult, I can throw on this dino onesie and be completely set. So this pajama party comes around, I whip it out, I head to the party with the hood, and it has purple tail. It is just a full lavender outfit. And then senior pub night was that night, and the pub is 10 feet from the location of this a cappella party in the annex. So I just thought that the a cappella party would be more happening, and more of them would be seniors and therefore transitioning to the pub. And unfortunately, I made it to the pub, and I was the only person wearing a non-normal outfit. A few more joined. Okay, you're shaking your finger at me. At the beginning, I was the only one. Then we got like 5 out of, I don't know, 85, 5 out of 100 people in the pub. And I just thought it would be funny. I thought people would be like, she's owning it. And I just walk in, and everyone is wearing their, like, cute, like, sexy going out tops. People are dressed all nice with, like, a beer in hand, like, chatting with their friends, all their makeup on and their hair done. And I, like, rolled up in a purple onesie. I had a tail, Rachel. I had a tail. And so I, like, crawl in, and I went up to the bartender, and I'm like, hey, could I get this type of beer? And she just looked at me like, why are you here? Like, why do you belong here? It was such a mess. I wore it all night. I wore it to the diner after. I just acted like it was fine and walked around campus. I'm really proud of myself for owning it, but this was a moment where I thought I would look a lot cooler than I was.
Listeners, this is all an elaborate lie. Kate wore the onesie on purpose because she's a slug.
What?
No, I'm kidding. Kate's telling the truth. But I thought you looked great, and I think that was a great statement as a swug, that you just, you, like, barge in, you're wearing this dinosaur costume, and you're like, I don't care what you think. I'm graduating. I'm going through a quarter-life crisis, and you can't stop me. I'm going to drink my beer in this costume.
Help. I know. I have a boyfriend who's abroad. I don't care. I'll just wear my dino onesie. Greg was really proud of me for wearing this onesie.
I thought you looked great.
I sent a photo to him, and he was like, that's my girl. I would have worn the same. I'll let him wear the dino onesie next time. All right. Tell me about dem apples.
How about dem apples, though? Surprise, surprise. This is also about Jackson, somehow. Because my life is not very exciting. And a visitor is, just throws a wrench in my otherwise boring life. So I pretty much spent, like, the whole weekend with him because I knew he was leaving, and I was like, you're going to Georgia. I don't know when I'm ever going to see you again, so. And I also had just handed in my rough draft of my thesis at that point, so I was very much in non-work mode. I was
helps.
like, I'm about to not do work for a straight, 72 hours, and no one can stop me, which I did. So my vignette is that Saturday, I was hanging out with Jackson. It was around 3 p.m. I was hanging out with him and Zach. Shout out to Zach again. And they were talking about Emily, and they go, where's Emily? And I go, I don't know, I'll text her. So I texted her, and she said she was at her apartment doing laundry. And Jackson goes, oh, we should go visit her. And I was like, yeah, why not? So I text her, we're coming down, and she's like, great, come on down. So Zach gets in his car, and he drives us down the hill, and we run through the rain, duck into her apartment. We're dripping wet. We go into her apartment, and we're checking it out, and it's really exciting. And I'm like, do you have any coffee? I would really enjoy a hot cup of coffee right now. And she's like, yeah, sure. And then Jackson and Zach's voices pop up, and they go, I wouldn't mind a cup of coffee too. It'll be okay. So then she makes a huge pot of coffee, and it's really good coffee, and we're all putting flavored syrups in it and drinking it. And then I'm like, we should play a game. Do you have any games? And we go through her games. We find pretty much the only thing she had was a huge apples to apples. I'm like, we could make a fun game out of this. So we all gather around. We move her table into the middle of the living room. We all gather around, and we're sipping our coffee, and we're playing apples to apples. She puts John Mayer on shuffle, so we're listening to John Mayer, and we're having a uproariously fun time with apples to apples. We're making it somehow more like Cards Against Humanity than apples to apples. We found a way to make it nihilistic and mildly offensive with apples to apples cards. And it was just really funny because we all know each other pretty well because we all lived in South. So we were able to pull at each other's strings, and we knew what we were looking for in a card, and we just did that for almost 2 hours. Just sat around the table and just played and drank coffee, and then we all went out to dinner.
That sounds so nice. This is all I hope that post-grad will be.
I know. That's all I want. This is why honestly want to have as many roommates as possible because I'm frugal. Also, I like being alone, so we could just have little family parties together. It was just
I love the idea of family
nice
parties.
because they feel my family. They're my family here. Like,
Yeah.
you guys in South, we were so interconnected, and we, like, supported each other so much throughout that first year. It's a bond that has definitely changed a lot, but will always be there, I think, for me. Like,
That's
if I
so
saw
cool.
anyone from that building walking down the street, pretty much, like, 98% of that building, if I saw them walking down the street, I would, like, walk up and hug them, like, 10 years down the road.
Aww.
So, that was a lovely weekend.
Did you hug me, Rachel?
No. We'd probably already be walking together.
Cheers.
You didn't listen to what I said.
Fair.
It's because
I
we'd
did
already
hear
be walking
what I
together
did.
down the street. Yes, because we'll be married because you'll leave Greg for me. What? Who said that? It was me. Sorry, Greg. Na Japanya Babanichi Babo Sidum.
Goodbye, art.
Goodbye, arts. Na Japanya Babanichi Babo Sidum.
Hello, crafts. Hello, crafts. Hello, crafts.
Gosh, now I want to watch The Lion King now.
Well, I've watched so few Disney movies, Rachel.
I like your correct use of few instead of little Disney movies.
Oof, that would be rough if I said so little Disney movies.
Well, people say that frequently. They'll say, like, I have so little something, and it's like a noun, but it should be so few because you're counting it. I don't know. It's a very common grammar
There's
mistake.
some ways where that's really hard to keep straight.
Yeah. Anywho, let's talk about your scribble because it looks exciting.
Ooh, thank you. For once, I am not the repeat scribbler talking about the same thing. TBT to the time you thought I was talking about my blog that I wrote 2 years ago. So I have been on a hunt to find a farm to woof at in Greece this summer, and it wasn't really paying off. I was messaging people on the Woof website, WWOOF. For those of you who don't know it, woofing is a kind of farm share program where you can go stay at a host's house in almost any country in the world, and they will house you and feed you. And they won't pay you, but you can basically be there for free and work on their farm for them. So I really want to do this in Greece. It's like my entire summer plan, and I haven't been able to get one. None of the hosts will take me. They already have someone full. They don't want people working in the heat of the summer. They won't respond to my emails, yada, yada, yada. So I decided to put myself in full scribble beast mode. And I was so stressed about this that I decided to write one message to a new farm every single day until I got one. And I did it. I literally wrote one every day. And by the time I'd sent like 20, someone finally responded and they accepted me. And now I don't have to write any anymore. And this farm that accepted me, I'm really excited about. But chances are if I had kept on waiting, they would have found someone. Or it wasn't one I was like immediately had seen at the top of the list because it's in the very, very northern Greece. And I was wanting something more towards the islands in the south. But if I'd been waiting for that, I wouldn't have gotten one at all. Don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good.
Ding!
So I found this farm. They messaged me back. And lo and behold, they have bees, Rachel. Throwback, I keep saying that this episode, to episode 1 where I talked about my love of beekeeping. I get to possibly beekeep on this farm in Greece because of all of the hard work and scribbling that I put in recently. So I'm giving myself a pat on the back for a productive, really beneficial scribble that I did to help future Kate. I actually thought about future Kate for once.
Oh, this is a revolutionary scribble.
Yes.
Oh, that's unexpected. Mine is not for you, just for like us in general. Usually
True.
our scribbles are very forced and negative.
Or like, let's talk about the scribble I didn't write.
Yeah, remember that week that neither of us had scribbles and we just publicly
That was
shamed
like
ourselves?
Was that like week 3?
I don't know. Let's check the archives. It was week 3. There are
Whoa,
none.
I'm good.
That was a weird laugh. Okay, so my scribble is my thesis. I wrote thesis, LOL. But true, it is the most important scribble of the most recent week of my life, I finished my thesis, asterisk, because it was my rough draft, and I still have edits to do for tomorrow that I have not done and now have to do tonight, and it is almost midnight.
I'm so sorry.
Ha 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 ha. Yep, that's all I'm going to say about that, but I did my thesis, and I honestly didn't think I would, but I cranked out like 26 pages in like a 2-day span, so...
That is scary, but you
Isn't
did
that
it.
horrifying? I don't recommend it, kids. Let's talk about my experiment, because that's exciting. My experiment this week, I didn't really know it was happening, but then it happened. On Monday, I just got in this mindset where I decided I was going to catapult myself out of my comfort zone.
What?
Yeah, I started the day off by crossing a thing off of my Hamilton bucket list that I had been wanting to do for a very long time, but that was very scary to me. And I did it, and it was horrifying. But afterwards, I was exhilarated, and I was so pumped up that I decided the rest of the day I was going to literally leap out of my comfort zone and, like, annihilate myself in the best possible way. So I got off campus, went to a cafe, came back, climbed the rock wall, and I have not climbed...
Did you make it to the top?
No, So I haven't climbed a rock wall in like 7 years, not since like sophomore year of high school maybe, and it really scares me, not because I'm afraid of heights, and I climbed a lot as a kid. I climbed trees everywhere. I was like a huge tomboy, but I don't have a lot of upper body strength, and it makes me feel very inferior. And I also feel like, akin to the outing club that we have on campus, I feel like people who climb the rock wall are a very exclusive club, and they're very good at what they do, and they're very closed off, and I don't want to intrude. But I did it because I was walking to the gym, and I ran into Haley, and she was one of the people I went to the cafe with, and she was like, "Oh, are you coming to the rock wall with me and Liv and Meg?" And I was like, "No, I know, I was just gonna go on the elliptical or something." And she was like, "You should come." And I was like, "Maybe I should. Okay, I'll come." So I went, and I got halfway up the rock wall on my first try, and honestly would have gone all the way to the top, but my hands seized up because you use muscles that you don't use for anything else. So they looked like dinosaur claws or something. I couldn't unclench them. So I was very proud of myself. I didn't force it. I knew that it was just going to get worse. I could have kept going, but it was happening very rapidly, and I just told them to bring me down. I was only on the wall for like a few minutes, but I was like, nope, this is enough. So I brought myself down. But now I have a goal to work towards, getting to the top, so I can go back. And then after that, I went to spinning, which was my first time at spinning.
Did you like it?
I did like it.
I love spinning.
The instructor is so adorable.
Maureen's the best.
She's so cute. And she played the best songs, and I was totally jamming out. Meals was on the bike next to me. Shout out to Amelia. And I was just, like, singing at her. I was playing air trumpet, air guitar. It was great. And then after that, we did like an intense ab workout. Well, it wasn't intense. It was actually super low-key. It was a super low-key ab workout. But it was intense for me because I did so much like physical activity that day. And then I ate dinner outside and just ended the day having not done any work academically, but having done a lot of physical and spiritual work. And I felt so good about that day. It felt like an extension of my weekend vacation with Jackson post handing in thesis. So my experiment was to forcibly exit my comfort zone, and I did so, and it was awesome. I was so proud of myself.
I love that.
Yeah.
Good job doing the rock wall. That's something I've also avoided at Hamilton because I'm bad at it, and therefore I don't do it, which is silly. But
we should go together.
We should.
Accountability buddies.
Oh, I can make myself finally go to the rock wall. Cringe. My experiment also has to do with physical activity. I learned on Saturday that my swim technique is completely wrong and just god-awful. I had one of the varsity swimmers watching me while I swam to give me advice. And I just kind of bit the bullet on this one because I was like, Hamtrak is in 2 weeks and I'm really slow at swimming and I would like to improve. And the swimming, I make it, I finish it, but it's no matter how hard I work, I'm still going the same speed, which doesn't make sense to me why I can't physically go any faster. And like all of my friends who know how to swim but who haven't worked out at all will get in the pool and whoop me, which is really frustrating because I've put in so much time to swimming this semester and have not improved at all. So that's been really a bummer for me. So this shout out to Frankie. Frankie looks at my swim technique and he's like, you know, you're doing this weird thing with your shoulders. You're also doing this weird thing with your hips. You're also kicking incorrectly. You're also doing this weird thing with your arms. And I was like, wow, I think every part of my body was incorrect when I was swimming freestyle. So that was the difficult part. I don't take criticism well. I don't like being told I'm doing things wrong, but it was necessary. But the experiment was, after telling me all this, I had to put it into practice. And I have been teaching myself incorrect swimming technique literally since I was born. I've never been doing this right. And now, in the 2 weeks towards Hamtramck, I need to reteach myself how to swim. And it is so much harder than it seems because trying to swim a different way, this is like a long, like it's 550 meters, which is 21 laps. But at like a race pace, if I'm using muscles that I wasn't even activating before, like didn't even know I was supposed to be using those muscles in the pool. And so now I'm like uncomfortable, flailing in the water, and also my body's just on fire. I did 25 meters, which is for the record, one length of the pool. And I had to stop and I was like panting and I couldn't breathe when I got to their side because like my muscles were just like flailing through the water, trying to swim the correct way to get across because it was so uncomfortable for me. And so Saturday sucked. I just was so frustrated. But on Tuesday, I got back in the water and I was like, my experiment is to patiently relearn this skill and be okay with myself, not be like, Kate, you need to be able to swim exactly what you're doing before. Just accept that I'm learning something and it takes time. And I made it up to swimming 4 lengths of the pool on Tuesday without dying. I could do it in a row, and I'm going to go tomorrow morning, and we are going to see if I can get to like 8 lengths of the pool or something. And hopefully by Hamtramck, I'll be doing the whole thing correctly. So it's been a really difficult experiment because I don't like doing things I'm bad at. And half of me is like, oh, I should just go back to the old technique because it was easier. But I know this is the one that's better for me in the long run.
I'm proud of you.
Thanks.
If it makes you feel any better, I am the worst at swimming. I literally finished second to last in the swim test for the school. And that was because the person who was after me literally didn't know how to swim. Literally could not swim. So I have faith in you. My exchange is connected to my experiment. I mentioned that I got off campus, went to a cafe. The cafe was Cafe Domenico, which is Meg's favorite cafe in Utica. I went with Meg and Haley and Liv. And we were only there for about an hour and a half because Haley had to come back for some meeting or something. I think it was a writing center conference. And we were there for such an awkward period of time where I don't think any of us wanted to pull out our work and do it. But we also weren't leaving anytime soon, so we all just kind of made the collective decision to not do work and just have a conversation. And it was such a good conversation. It was about post-grad and the loss of intellectually stimulating conversations and reading for pleasure and dealing with shifting relationships. And it was also with a lot of women that I really admire and would love to be closer to, like Haley and Liv. Not so much Meg, because I see her a lot this semester. So it felt really great to bond with the two of them and get closer to them after spending like literally the whole day with them doing all these gym things. Well, no, that happened after the cafe. So in preparation to spending the whole day together. So short and sweet, I really like spending time with them, and the conversation really put me at ease and confirmed that, again, a theme that we've been preaching a lot on liberal arts and crafts, we are all in the same boat. We are all suffering and have similar fears about suffering. Suffering is the human condition. We all have very similar fears about post-grad, and you are not alone. So
Rachel and I went to a meditation class tonight, and one woman said that she was thinking about her health a lot when she was trying to meditate, and it was distracting. And the teacher responded with, "Yes, that's very difficult. We all will die. Death is inevitable." And I was like, that made no one feel better.
I think her
Even if
exact
it's
words
true.
were like, the woman was a bit older, and the person who was leading the class was also older. And I think her exact words were like, death is a very real thing at this point in our lives. She was like, death, you know, it's real. It's coming.
It could happen any day to you.
It could happen to you. And Kate and I were sitting there like, oh my God.
I was like, die.
Death is my ultimate trigger, listeners. Death, you know how people say their greatest fear is like spiders or like getting lost in the woods or fire or whatever. No, my greatest fear is death. I don't want to die, which is funny because it is inevitable. It's a funny fear because it will happen to me.
I am really, okay, I'm not afraid of death. And it's because when I die, I won't know anything anymore. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Like, once I'm dead, nothing matters. So I should focus on all the things. This is a really dark conversation we're steering. I don't know why it's starting now during our exchange section, but here we go. I feel like everything that happens before that moment is really important. And that if I were to die in like some freak happenstance thing, I wouldn't have even seen it coming and I wouldn't even realize it afterwards. I'm afraid of like being sick for a long period of time, knowing I was going to die, because then I have this time is running out kind of feeling. But if I was just like, boop.
Make no mistake, I too am terrified of getting some sort of debilitating illness and withering away into a
Really? I
mote
thought
of dust.
you weren't afraid of that.
Yes, I've considered that too, but just the sheer concept of not existing when my existence is all that I've ever known and has seemed so natural to me and like something that has always been and will always be there, just even contemplating not existing, literally, if I think about it for more than 15 seconds, will lead to a panic attack.
That's a very valid fear.
So, again, before we jump into this existential abyss, Kate, what is your exchange?
My exchange is positive and unrelated to this. I just had a really, this is kind of a vignette. I had a great time this weekend. On Sunday night, we were recording for the Hamiltons for our upcoming CD. We recorded all the senior solos, which meant that I got to sing a solo for the first time on one of our recordings, singing Lullaby of Birdland, which I played on Liberal Arts and Crafts a while ago. And we had this new woman who was helping us record named Catherine, and she was just so fun and spunky and was so clearly passionate about the work that she did in recording. She does all sorts of recording, but she was she's in graduate school for music composition, or is going to go to, or is currently in it. And anyways, we had all these like, so with me recording this song, she'd be like, okay, sing this portion. And then I'd sing it, and she would never be like, okay, you're done, let's move to the next section. Like, every single time without fail, she'd go, all right, I want you to sing it again. But instead of saying, I want you to sing again and, you know, make this part a little louder, she'd usually be like, I want you to sing this again and really think about what the words are saying. Really put the nuance into the words. Like, okay, what is this line? This line is, that's how I cry in my pillow. Do you think she's actually sad? Really? Do you think she's actually sad? And I was like, no, I don't think she's sad. And Kat's like, of course she isn't sad. She's being coy and she's being flirty and she's making fun of this person. She can get what she wants. You should be singing it like in a really flirty, like silly way. And I was like, oh, you're right. Like, I never thought that before. And it totally transformed the way that I sang the song. And by the end, I haven't heard the final recording yet, but I just felt that every section was exactly how I wanted it to be. And not just like exactly like the notes were right. It was like the feel of the piece was what I wanted. And that was so fun for me to do. Like, literally every word, she was like, no, do that again, but do it this way. And I'd be like, oh, you're right. Like, I should be angry at that point. So it was really cool to see someone and like interact with someone who is so passionate about it, but also who changed the way that I thought about how I interact with music. And in my Hamilton's rehearsal last night and my choir rehearsal tonight, I just felt like all the words I was really thinking about, like, not just should I sing the dynamics or the notes right. It was like, what is it saying and what should I then make it reflect? So I thought that was really neat, my fun little conversation with Kat.
now. I really want to listen to it now.
You'll hear it when it's done.
Woo! Maybe I'll buy your CD. Just kidding.
It's free.
Really?
Yeah.
What?
The patents to sell this stuff, like, it would cost so much money for us to buy the rights to sell our own CD, ironically, because we didn't produce it. So, just free.
I see. Okay.
We'd be making money off the work someone else did, kind of.
Right.
In a way.
No, yeah, that's true.
Well, listeners, that is all we have time for today on Liberal Arts and Crafts.
And you know what time it is. Time for our sponsors. But first, we have a very special word from a very special sponsor who still has not given us any real money. So if any lawyers are listening to this, for any sort of legal reason, we did not receive any compensation from this nonprofit. Here we go, an exclusive interview with Emily Moskowitz.
This episode is sponsored by Utica Greens, which you can check out at uticagreens.org for more information on local urban gardens.
At Utica Greens NY. Check her out on Insta for more information about the vegetable of the month. If you have any free time and would like to volunteer for the urban gardening nonprofit Utica Greens, you can contact Emily at uticagreensny@gmail.com.
Apart from Utica Greens, this episode was also sponsored by the missing socks that your dryer has sacrificed to the laundry gods.
This episode was also sponsored by when your pants tear at the crotch and you refuse to retire them.
This episode was sponsored by Old Friends.
This episode was sponsored by the knights who say, "Icky, icky, icky, patang, zoom boing."
And last but not least, this episode was sponsored unofficially by WHCL. I totally thought you were going to say that.
Patang, zoom boing.